beginning of the pandemic. Our doors may be closed at the synagogue building itself, but that hasn't kept us from getting together on Zoom. Sadly, for virtual coffee, I cannot offer you food. As a piece of information, we have no control over Zoom. If you should freeze, just close your window and come back in. It happens to the best of us. This morning is different, as we will listen to people who know the stories firsthand of what Madison Avenue, Bridgeport, Connecticut was like, not from a customer perspective of those of us who walked in the front door, but from the backstory, as one might say. I will leave the introductions to Mike Fleischer, who has brought all of you together. Now for some ground mute rules. I did mute all of you so there is no background noise, and ask that as you are introduced, you unmute yourself. If you have a problem doing that, I believe I can do it since I claimed to be a host. And our wonderful cantor, Hirsch, is also a co-host. So if I get stuck, she'll be able to troubleshoot. We will listen to all stories and anecdotes. And at the end of the program, there will be time for comments and questions. The program is being recorded, as have all of our other programs. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Mike now. I thank all of you in advance for participating, for sharing, and I know you're going to find this a great morning. So Mike, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Carol, for coordinating all this. Let me just tell you who's going to be speaking later formally. Hopefully we'll all speak later. My sister, Jan Bufford, will be speaking. I don't know if she's on now because she wanted to get her hair done before this morning. Even though it's not in person, she thought it was necessary to get her hair done, I guess. Also speaking later will be Ronnie Farrell from Kaufman's gas station, which became Kaufman Fuel. Benny Levine's daughter, Meredith Damu, will be, excuse me. Knighton's Meredith Damu will be speaking. Roz Pomeranik will be speaking. She's Benny Levine's daughter. David Stone will be speaking about Goldstein's Butcher Market. And Justin Lustig will be speaking about his father's live chicken market, which I think was before my time. And my cousin Sheila Zauderer Strauss will be speaking about Zauderer's Bakery. And I thank all my cousins and friends that joined, and I didn't even have to pay them. They were looking forward to joining. But anyways, let me start with my dad. Okay, after my dad was discharged from the service in 1947, the family opened Tasty Delicatessen, a kosher deli on Madison Avenue that he had for about 30 years. The deli was next door to Zauderer's Bakery, which was owned by my grandparents until 1941. Later on, my cousin Sheila will share some stories about Zauderer's Bakery. I know growing up, I had a lot of deli. I don't want to even tell you some of the foods we ate. I just wish I knew back then to buy stock in a cholesterol drug. I think I would have done very well had I done that. If my dad could be here today, he would definitely have a lot of stories that he could share with you. I do have some that I would like to share today. One in particular, okay, it revolves around brown paper bags. And it's, excuse me, it's a story, let me repeat that. It's a story that I remember very vividly going on a school class trip. In those days, we came home for lunch, so you didn't bring your lunch to school. So when you went on a class trip, it was a big deal. You got to bring your own sandwich. Well, I kind of dreaded that day. And the reason I dreaded that day, because most of the kids in the class, they brought, a sandwich, 2 slices of white bread with, a slice of meat between it, maybe, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and a bag of chips. Well, not me. I had to get a pastrami sandwich that had enough meat on the sandwich to feed the entire class. Okay. I didn't get juice or milk with it. I got a can of Dr. Brown's cream soda, and it came with, he would give me pickles and coleslaw, not potato chips. And I said, Dad, I don't want the pickles and coleslaw. And he would tell me they were included. So I had to take them. I didn't know I was paying for it though. From the time I was about 13 to 22, I worked for my father, and that's really where I got a lot of my life lessons. Not really in college or when I worked for IBM. I learned them all in the deli. And one in particular I remember was revolved around brown paper bags. So in those days, they had different sizes, you know, small, medium, large, extra large, and you should use the appropriate bag. Well, one day somebody came in and purchased a small container of coleslaw, and I rang it up and I thought it'd be easier, just put it in a big bag. Well, my father told me that that bigger bag cost him almost a penny more. And of course, I said to my dad, well, I can give you the penny. I was going to try and convince you today that I told him that what he should do is ask customers to bring their own bags. And then if they didn't, sell them a bag for like 10 cents. He said, what are you, crazy? Nobody's ever going to do that. Well, my dad would always tell us the deli business was like a 24/7 job, and the deli becomes your home away from home. And your staff and customers, they become your family. He was always reminiscing about the young men and women whose first jobs were working in the deli and how proud he was of how successful people they became. I see that one of my dad's all-time favorite employees, Alan Albert, is in the meeting today. And hopefully later, Alan will share some stories of working at Tasty's in the 60s. My dad also had a lot of UB students working in his deli. I remember some from Long Island when the dorms were closed at UB, whether it was the summer or holidays or vacations, they would sleep at our house so they could get up early and work in the deli in the morning. I really enjoyed having those older college kids at my house. Hopefully my sister's on now, and I'd like to turn it over to her to say a few words. Jan Bufford. Jan? Jan? I don't see that she's on. Oh, hold it. There she is. Jan, you have to unmute yourself. Up in the top right, there's like hit the top of your iPad. Your hair looks nice, but you got to unmute the phone. Well, what I'll do is, since I suspected this might, Carol, can you unmute her?
Unmute. Hello?
Hello, sister. It's all yours.
About that. As Michael mentioned, UB students worked and were regular customers at the deli. They could not get enough the pastrami and corned beef. For $1.25, you got a sandwich, French fries, pickles, coleslaw, and a drink. The deli also catered many of the bat mitzvahs in the 60s at Rosh Hashanah. Everyone had the same thing: mini sandwiches with the fancy toothpicks sticking out with all the fixing. Besides my dad owning the deli, I also remember how exciting it was to get free cookies from the bakery. Even after my grandparents sold the bakery, I remember how my grandmother still continued to bake for family and friends. My own kids even remember Grandma Ethel making hummus in my mother's kitchen. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Okay.
Carol, do you want me to pick the next person, or you have it in order?
No, you pick.
Okay, Meredith, would you like to speak about Nidens now? We don't want to do too much on food in a row.
Sure, I'm happy to speak about Nidens. I think this is such a nice opportunity to share what's going on, what went on Madison Avenue back in the 50s and 60s. But Nidens actually opened up in 1918, 2 years after my grandfather, Isaac Niden, came from Russia. It did not open up on Madison Avenue in 1918, though. His first store was on
Did she freeze, Meredith?
Yes? Am I frozen?
No, I
Oh,
think
okay.
you're fine.
Okay. So yes, okay. The first
He's
store,
not going to know she's frozen.
I don't think I am frozen.
Can
No,
everybody,
she's-
if you can't hear her, raise your hand.
The problem is that Mike is frozen.
Yeah, Mike, you're frozen.
Mike, yeah, we're okay.
It's you, Mike.
Don't talk while I'm
Keep
interrupting.
talking, you're not frozen.
Okay, should I continue?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I mentioned the first store was on Lindley Street. And several years later, then my grandfather had the building built at 904 Madison Avenue. I think I did share some photographs, so maybe later Carol will be sharing those photographs that show two of the original buildings that were on Madison Avenue. As a little girl living not far from Nidens, I have very vivid memories of walking from Manhattan Avenue down Wayne Street to the store on Madison Avenue, sometimes stopping along the way at Dorman's drugstore to get an ice cream sundae or another treat. Sometimes we'd stop for our haircut at Sam the Barber's, and I would have the traditional Buster Brown and then later the pixie haircut. I have very vivid memories of that. But then we'd arrive, usually I'd be with one or both of my sisters, and we'd arrive at Nidens, and I would excitedly tour the entire store. I would first stop at the lingerie department where my mother might be very busy. My mother, Ann Niden Stark, would be very busy straightening up all the merchandise, folding and refolding to make sure everything looked just so. The lingerie department was eye candy for any little girl because besides the lingerie, they had all sorts of gift items and overnight bags and toiletry cases. And, you know, I would just love checking all of the merchandise out. I'd then wander over to the women's department where I might see Elsa Niden and Charlie Niden working the merchandise there and greeting all the customers warmly. And again, just the amount of merchandise in the store and the beauty and the colors and the textures were just so much fun to look at. Over at the men's department, Harry Niden would be holding court, usually chatting with all the customers and sharing stories, not just about Nidens, but about life. I then wandered into my most favorite department ever as a little child, and that was the children's department. I'd see the life-size mannequins dressed up in all the clothes of the season, and I only kept wanting to bring one of those mannequins home to play with. And actually, one day my mother did bring me one of those home, and that was my doll for a long time. I then would go down the wide stairs and enter my father's realm, which was the shoe department. Harvey Stark was definitely the mainstay of the Niden shoe department. And there he had hundreds of boxes of shoes in inventory at any time. And any customer there was treated and their foot measured. And they were given a lot of opportunities to try on as many shoes as they wanted. In fact, when I was a little girl, I actually wrote a poem about my father having all the people try on shoes. From the shoe department, you could wander back into the boys department. And that department wasn't as exciting for me as a little girl, but what I did love was the Boy Scout uniform department. And that was tucked away in the back of the store. So that was my tour of Nidens. And again, like many of you, I hope later you'll share some stories of memories that, you know, you might have from wandering through the halls of Nidens department store.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I'm going to ask you to mute, and I'm taking over introducing because Mike keeps freezing. So Jordan, would you tell us about the chicken market? Can you unmute, Jordan, or do you need me to?
Any better?
Yes, that's great. Thank
All
you.
right. I
Jordan
just learned
Lustig.
something, right?
Yes,
I'm Jordan Lustig, Bridgeport born and raised. Attended Madison School and Central High School, graduating there in 1949. And if you add it, I'm 88 years old. When asked to talk about Madison Avenue, my mind went right to the 1940s until Michael said it was the 50s and 60s. Can you hear me? Because I don't see anything.
Jordan, you're covering the camera. Can you move your hand or your paper away from the camera?
Oh, I'm sorry. How's that?
There you are.
that's
Okay.
much better.
How's that, Ted?
Nice sweater. Good morning.
All right.
All right.
I
here-
said, when I was asked to talk about Madison Avenue, my mind went right to the 1940s until Michael said the 1950s and 60s. The reason I'm here primarily is because my father had a live chicken business at Madison Avenue, just north of Wheeler Avenue. He opened that location and kept it going until the day before he died at 84 years old. And he passed in 1974. He opened there, it was late, maybe 1958, but it wasn't his beginning of business. He started what was a kosher meat and live chicken business, what was called the Hollow section of Bridgeport in 1918 on Lexington Avenue. And being away from Bridgeport during most of the 50s at either college, law school, or working at a Florida law firm until I returned to Bridgeport was somewhere around August of 1980. I'm sorry, 60, I take it back. And I got married about 9 months later. My helping at the market in those years was not like it was when I was in high school on Lexington Avenue, where I went quite often. By then already, I had become a grown man working in my own profession, and my sort of life had changed a little bit with obligations and eventually having, my own family. But Dad kept going until he was 84 years old. And he worked in the market on Madison Avenue until the day before he died. And that was the old generation of people that came from Europe. And, that this is where they found their pleasure in working, doing, keeping busy, and family, which was very important in those years. And it was passed on to all of us, the importance, of our family. Let's see. I hear all of you speak before, and you're talking about your respective families and their businesses. It brought back wonderful memories to me. By and large, but later on, actually, a large kosher catering house opened up in Hartford, and the need for people to have to buy chickens locally and have the sheikha who would come to the markets, by the way, every Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon and slaughter the chickens right then and there. And all the butchers would come and sit in a circle and have to hand pluck because they did not have machines in the early 40s. And those are some of those memories that I have that I'll never forget, as they sat there with their cigars and pipes and told their stories. And when Dad died in 1974,
Jordan,
yes.
move your hand.
Oh,
Your
I'm
hand
sorry.
is in front of the camera again.
And when Dad died in 1974, the business closed that day, and that was the end of the business that he had been in since 1918. When I was first asked to talk, my immediately thoughts went to the 1940s, because that was a time when I had an Uncle Ben who owned a kosher butcher market. And he was right on Madison Avenue in the middle of the hustle and bustle, maybe 2 stores away from or the deli or one or the other, but he was right in the middle of that particular row of stores that went from Jackson Avenue to McKinley, I think it was. And what I remember so much about that was going there with my father at nighttime. And at 9 o'clock, there was Gabriel Heater would come on. And maybe a half a dozen old Jewish men who lived in the neighborhood came into the store with their pipes and their cigars and sat there and listened to Gabriel Heater. And he would make some announcement of something like, the Americans bombed Ploieski, and they go, hoo-ha, hoo-ha. And those are the remarks that I remember of these older people. And it was a very enjoyable time, lovely people. We were still in the throes of Orthodox synagogues that had no names to them, only High Street, Grand Street, the Big Shul. Only Roda Sholem and Agudas Achim actually had names, but I think one of the ones on the West End used to be called by the street it was on, which I cannot recall the exact name. But those are some of my early remembrances of Bridgeport, and I may have drifted a little bit away from the 50s and 60s into the 40s, and I hope you'll excuse me for that. And
that's okay. That's a perfect segue when you said the meat market, because that's where David Stone can pick up. Is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah. I just want to add one thing about Zouderers. I used to have to go to the Orthodox shuls at that time for either a yahrzeit, or when my daughters were born, we named them there, and it was on Arlington Street already by that time. And I used to have to go right onto Madison Avenue, behind the bakery, into the backyard at 6 o'clock in the morning, and pick up hot rolls to be able to take to the shul with a bottle of schnapps and another bottle of herring, and bring it to the Minyan, and then on Arlington Street. And after praying, naming your children and everything, there they are at 7 o'clock in the morning, getting through a bottle of Canadian Club. So, the old men sitting, to me, they were old. Now they seem like babes in the woods. But those are some of my memories of those early years.
That's great. Thank you. I'm going to ask David Stone to come on now. David, can you unmute yourself?
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Okay.
Did they unmute me themselves?
Hi, everybody.
Muted,
It is
yeah.
so fascinating to hear stories by everyone and to see a lot of the people here who I knew as children. Claire, you were one of them. I remember when you were Marty's younger sister. A bunch of other people who have spoken. I graduated, well, let's see how to start. I went to Shelton School. I first went to the Bridgeport Yeshiva at Rabbi Stocks until 4th grade, and then I went to Shelton School. Then I went to Central, and I graduated in 1960. My grandfather emigrated to the United States in 1887. I think his first butcher market was on the corner of Federal and Madison. Then they moved down the street to 813 Madison Avenue. I have been working extremely hard to try and get, oh golly, this picture, which does not show until I do something else. But anyway, I took a photograph, made a photograph from an old movie that my dad had made in the 1940s. And I had been working on this thing for a long time, and I could not get a really good copy of it because it was not a very good copy to start with. But doesn't it remind you of a shtetl? It's written kosher basar or basar kosher. My dad's got the sailor cap on. My uncle Heshi Goldstein is the guy between my grandfather, whose name was Gedalia, and my uncle Larry Stone, on the guy all the way to the left. Anyway, so that was really hours of work to get that little picture. Let me get this off the screen here. So let's go back to memories. Everybody who mentioned something had something to do with my life. We started off at Dorman's Drugstore. I lived right behind Dorman's Drugstore, first house. My first job at 16 was at Dorman's, but I had worked in my father's butcher market since I was in 5th grade. Great reminiscing of my father's butcher market was this. My father was really orthodox and kosher. One of the memories I have is after Shabbos, my father or his brother, they alternated. After Shabbos was over, they would go to the butcher market on Saturday night to make hamburger because it was such a big seller on Sunday. Biggest, most busy time of the week was Thursday. They had a truck that would make deliveries to people all around Fairfield and Bridgeport. It was a very busy time. I used to go to Shelton School and we would go home for lunch. On the way home, I would stop at my father's butcher market once or twice a week, and we would make something to eat in the back of the store. But once a week, I would get to go to Tasty's, and I would get a hot dog with potato salad. That was my routine. They were wonderful people there. They had a dish of pieces of salami on the counter, and it said a nickel a shtickle. It was wonderful, and I would get that. My brother, Paul, who passed away many years ago, his first job at 16 was working in Nidens. And my mom worked in Nidens children's department for many years. Remember, my family name was Goldstein, changed to Stone around 1963, 64. My father left the butcher business because of illness and went into real estate. And he changed his name from Goldstein to Stone, which was the original family name. My grandfather came here, his name was Gedalia Stein. I took a few notes. Nobody here is representing Jason's market. Jason's market was, I think, next to Tasty or somewhere along that end of the road. Mr. Jason was kind of a funny old dude. My sister reminded me of a story that he'd walk by the store and he'd say, "Hey, lady, you want to buy a half a cat?" That was on the block there too. As for Zouters, my brother discovered the alleyway between the appetizer store next to my father's butcher market. In the back of the alley was the driveway where the bakery trucks would pick up the stuff. And I can't remember Jordan mentioned the back alley. My brother discovered that a cool cupcakes on the porch back there. So he was 5 years older than me, and I copied my brother. He said, "Come with me," and we went into the back of the store and pilfered some cupcakes. We were never very good at the stealing. I always felt guilty. I'm just looking here. I made a few notes while people were talking. So my grandfather one with the beard, as I showed you there. He emigrated to Israel in 1947, and he had a stroke. We were supposed to move to Israel. We were all going to emigrate to Israel. But because my grandfather had a stroke, it didn't happen, and he ended up coming back home and living with us we lived on Capitol Avenue. It wasn't until around my bar mitzvah that we bought a house on Harlem Avenue. So Central High School, 1960, University of Bridgeport, 1964. And all of you guys that I kind of recognize from when we were younger, the Knighton family. I remember the names that you mentioned. Claire, I remember when she was a little girl, she was always a little cutie. And she was married to Harvey, who was my fraternity brother. It was nice to see everybody. I don't know what I'm leaving out. Do you think I'm leaving anything out, Carol?
I think it's great. You're
Beautiful.
sharing.
Thank you.
And I think
Thank you very much.
really.
Nice to see everybody.
So thank you, David. Now I'm going to look for Ron Farrell. We're going to move from food to not food and come back. So Ron, where are you?
He's muted, Carol.
Okay. Ron Farrell, can you unmute yourself? Let's see. Let me try to unmute him. Just be patient with me, all of you. Okay.
Carol, you can ask him to unmute, and then I think he just clicks on it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I unmuted.
Okay, you are. Great.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. You asked me where I am. I'm actually in Wellington, Florida. We're outside of West Palm Beach area for the winter. We'll return to Connecticut in the spring. Give you a little history regarding the Kaufmans. My mother was a Kaufman, and she had three other sisters and three brothers. Sam, Sid, and George. And for years in the 20s and the 30s after the Depression, my three uncles worked for Michael Hoffman, which was Hoffman Fuel in Bridgeport, which was Maury Hoffman's father. In 1938, the first Benzoline gas station opened up on Main Street and Overland Avenue. There's still a gas station there. I don't know what brand it is now. But Benzoline was a brand of gasoline that was distributed by the Shiner family, Irv Shiner and his father, out of New Haven. My uncles had the franchise to sell gasoline from that location. They were there from 1938 to 1950. In 1950, Kelso, which predated Chevron Oil Company, opened the first 6-bay gas station in Bridgeport, and that was at 850 Madison Avenue on the corner of Charles Street, directly across the, actually right next to Knighton's, across the street from Sunshine, across the street from Tasty and Zouters. Obviously, I remember as a young kid, we used to live up on Harlem Avenue, and as a young boy, I would ride my bike down from Harlem Avenue down Madison or Wayne Street to 850 Madison Avenue so that I could pump gas and work in the gas station. We were there. In addition to the gasoline station, we had, a small oil business at that point. Back years ago, my uncles used to deliver coal, which was before my time. My job when we were down on Madison Avenue was that I used to shovel the coal out of the houses because that's where we used to put the oil tanks, and then for the installers to put in chambers and convert coal furnaces to oil furnaces. We were on Madison Avenue from 1950 to 1970 when we moved down to Fairfield Avenue and opened, Kaufman Fuel at that point, and we had gotten out of the gas station business. Many stories that I have, regarding the gas station, a lot of funny things. So there was always something that happened, it seemed. And I, recall many times, normally on Saturdays, my uncle, Sam Kaufman, would take me to lunch over to Tasty, and we would sit down, and Irving, which is Jan and Michael's father, would come to the table, and Sam would say, Irving, I want pink fish eyes today. I said, oh my God, who eat fish eyes? And Irving would say, I'm sorry, Sam, we don't have pink fish eyes. We only have brown ones today. He said, well, all right, I'll have those. So those are, that's only one little story that I remember. There are other things that, I'll discuss if there's time. But pretty much that's it. I remember living on Harlem Avenue, my grandfather, I think he said that he started with like a 3 or 4 room house. And every time another child was born, which there was a total of 7, he would put on an 8 by 10 bedroom. So every kid had their own bedroom. So from a 4 room house, it became a 10 room house or thereabouts. But that's what I remember. And actually up on Harlem Avenue, believe it or not, my grandfather we had chickens. We had a cow back in those days. It's hard to believe that, that you had live animals up on Harlem Avenue. That's pretty much, the history of Kaufman up until now.
Thank you, Ron. That was great. Everybody is so fabulous. So I'm going to give you the plan for the rest of the morning, because I can see that we're going to be here a little bit longer than we anticipated, and you need not jump off. So the next person is going to be from Zauderer's Bakery. Then we're going to hear from Roz Pomeranik, otherwise known as Benny Levine's daughter. I've got pictures I'm going to show you when Roz is finished. I'm going to ask Alan Alper to come on when the pictures are over. I want you to know, in case you can't see because you're not in gallery view, Rabbi Nelson is on and listening. We have more than adopted him, and he has adopted us. What I'm seeing is more alumni of Rodef Sholem in one place, which is absolutely fabulous. So thank you, Rabbi Nelson. Thank you, Nima, for spotlighting. And now I'm going to call on Sheila from Zauderer's Bakery. So Sheila, can you unmute?
Yes, I've unmuted myself. I hope you can hear me.
Perfect.
I want to thank everybody. I'm not a resident of Bridgeport, but I lived there for a couple of years when I was a child, and my parents always came, and I loved going to Rodef Sholem with my grandfather, and I was so impressed by this beautiful, beautiful building. And I attended a Hebrew school there one day with a cousin, and I thought that was terrific. And I was sort of envious of them. And I think, it's wonderful that you're keeping it going. My grandfather founded Zauderer's Bakery in 1913. He was a baker, and my grandmother worked in the store too. And that was in Bridgeport, and it was on Riley Street. And then in 1916, they went to Lindley Street. And then in 1922, they moved to Linen Avenue. They also took the building on Madison Avenue, and he purchased the property. And it was a standalone brick building, which became the bakery, and a small wooden building in the front of it had become the first retail store. The retail store became very popular, and they used horse-drawn wagons in the beginning, but then they replaced them by trucks with Zauderer on it, and they delivered to their customers as well. The small bakery they decided to build a new building with 2 stores and living quarters above the store. The small bakery store was turned over to Meyer Chasen for fruit and vegetable. Levine's Chicken Market and Abramovitz's grocery store expanded at that time too. The old standbys on Madison Avenue, Spivak's Kosher Butcher, and Tannenbaum's grocery store were given impetus by the newer stores. And this was in the 1920s. And then they went on so that on Thursday before the Sabbath, Madison Avenue became the principal shopping center for the Jewish population. Many of them had moved to the North End from other areas. Parking space was at a premium. Max Zauderer had started to feature a number of cakes and pastries new to Bridgeport, such as babka and Russian coffee cake, Russian pumpernickel bread, a pure grain health bread, and potatonik for the Sabbath. In keeping with family tradition, customers would bring crocks of meat and potatoes to simmer in the brick ovens ready for Shabbos. In 1941, a young man who was a teenager needed a job. He came from Germany and to escape the Nazis, and he took a night job at the bakery to help his parents. At first, he baked, his name was Manfred Loeb. At first, he baked cakes, but gradually his boss, my grandfather, began trusting him to measure out the ingredients to make the golden loaves of egg bread that Jews eat at Sabbath and on special holidays. But he didn't want me to steal his challah recipe, Loeb recalls, so he kept giving me other jobs to do in between the measurements to distract me. It didn't work, Loeb adds. I secretly took notes so I could learn the recipe. Loeb's challah baking was interrupted by World War II and then by a brief stint in a tiny company. And then he and his wife opened a bakery in Maryland. And the challah recipe is in Joan Nathan's Jewish cooking book. And it was from Zauderer's Bakery. And it was also featured in a Joan Nathan's PBS program with Loeb baked challah with the recipe. In the 50s and 60s, my grandfather had sold the bakery in 1941. They kept the name Zauderer's because of the reputation, and the people who owned it expanded it, and kept it going. I remember going to the bakery, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't my name, but my grandfather didn't own it, but he owned the building. He was the landlord. And I had more fun at Toast. I remember going into the chicken market and seeing the chickens. That was more fun. And going to Tasty Delicatessen and having wonderful food and bringing it home for us. So, and there was a very funny story in the Bridgeport paper about someone who robbed a Zauderer's bakery in 1959, a boy who was trying to rob, and he had the person who was serving tried to talked him out of it by telling him she would give him a cupcake or something. And he said, yes, give me $1 and a cupcake, and that's it. But, my grandfather, I have a picture of my grandfather from 1921, 27, and my grandmother Ethel, and 3 kids. My grandfather, that was when they first founded the bakeries. My father's a little boy, and my grandfather wanted my father to take over the bakery, but my father never wanted to do that. So that's why he sold it. And then after he sold it, he baked bread for Swerdling's Bakery through the 50s and 60s. So that's all I have to say, and thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so glad that you came. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, Roz Pomeranik, can you unmute? And Sheila, would you mute yourself? Roz? Oh, great. I see you're unmuted. Now I just have to see you. There you are. Perfect.
Okay. My name is Rosalind Pomerantz. I'm the very proud daughter of Benny Levine. My mom and dad came to the United States in 1948 after being in concentration camp. And they came to Bridgeport through a connection with a distant cousin. My dad didn't speak any English, and the only thing he knew is that back when he was a boy in Poland, his dad did a little bit of meat business. So he took the bus downtown and he found the Washington Market. And he went to the meat department and he met there a man who became truly a part of our family, whose name was Stanley, Stash. And Stash spoke Polish. So my dad spoke with him and got him a job. And together they then went on to run the meat department at Sunshine. And then in 1957, my dad opened his own store on Madison, corner of Madison Boulevard. Now, it was a kosher meat store, but it wasn't your typical kosher meat store. He decided to do something a little different, and he sold in large quantities, like everything was primarily in 10-pound increments. Well, word kind of got around, and an interesting thing happened. He didn't have just Jewish customers. He had customers from all over. Black, white, Christian, Jewish, Hispanic, whatever you want. We used to always joke that he ought to run for mayor of Bridgeport because he was really very colorful and despite everything that had happened in his life, he was very cheery and very full of jokes and laughter. Even though he had appealed to such a diverse clientele, he always kept kosher. He only used kosher meat because that is what he believed in. I have here a picture, actually. I don't know if you could see it, and Carol, maybe you'll use it later also. This is the ribbon cutting of the ribbon cutting ceremony of the store. And in it is my dad and a rabbi from Bridgeport, together with the mayor, Mayor McLevy, and also Rabbi Harry Nelson. Rabbi Nelson became like a spiritual beacon to my parents. They were very attached to him. He gave them a lot of support and a lot of hope. And it was an honor to have him there for the ribbon cutting. Just like Michael had talked about the paper bags, my dad also was very much into not using so many paper bags. It wasn't the cost. It was, I think these people were the original conservationists, original environmentalists. One funny story I do remember is that my dad used to go twice a week to New York to the wholesale meat market to get meat. And even though my brother worked very much so in the store, and my brother-in-law, once they were away and in college, and a few times the driver didn't show up or was sick, he used to dress me up as a boy. He would put me in a little jacket and a hat on top of my head and say, just stay in the truck. And if anyone asks you your name is Jimmy. So that was one of my fond memories. But Madison Avenue was just an amazing place. I have many memories of it. I have a son and a daughter. My daughter is a lawyer. My son is a neurosurgeon. And yet, for each of their college essays and other things that they had to write, they've always included the legacy of that little, not so little, but of that butcher market in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It really was a very, very special place.
Thank you, Roz. This is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to attempt to show you some pictures. Those of you who spoke, if you want to add something about the pictures, I won't go forward until you've said something. If you don't want to say something, that's okay too. Once the pictures have been shown, then I'm going to ask Alan Alper for his story about Tasty. So let's hope that this is going to work. Okay, Meredith, I believe this is you.
Yes. Actually, I mentioned this when I was chatting. This is my mother, Ann Neiden Stark, working in the very popular lingerie department at Neiden's. And she was, like I said, constantly straightening up the merchandise. And I think it's a beautiful picture of my mother and a great showing of what one of the main departments of the store. And this too, this is one of the first buildings. As you could, actually, this one is the second one, I believe. This, I don't know what year it was built, but there it was, 904 Madison Avenue on the corner of Federal Street. An interesting aside is that building still stands after many renovations. And one of my children, my son Aaron, who is a physician, is in a practice that happens to be located in that very building.
Thank you. Okay, Rosalind.
Yeah, that was one of his, I believe, weekly ads. He used to always have these specials. And then also, every year before the holidays, he would put up this, I don't know if you could see, can you see this?
Oh,
No.
I have to go back to it. Wait a minute. Wait, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I have to, okay, hold on. That was my mistake. I clicked too fast. Let's see if I can get it to do what it has to. You know what? Something happened to the pictures. I don't know where they are, Roz.
Okay, well, in any case, it was basically,
Okay.
it wasn't an advertisement for meat. It was rather a dedication and a wish for health and happiness and peace for the coming new year. This is it.
I'm so happy that you showed the picture of the dedication before, because I don't know what happened to it here. Okay, that's my mistake. I'm sorry. Okay, Mike, do you want to talk about this one?
Is it up there? Which one's up there?
The menu.
Sure.
Carol, you're not sharing your screen anymore, Carol.
It's not up there.
Okay, all right, hold on, sorry. Let me make that, thank you, Sharon. let's see, what did I do? You got to be patient with me. I'll tell you a quick story while I'm doing this, that we asked, I went on the Facebook page of, if you're from Bridgeport, if you know these pictures. And so I asked if anybody had pictures, and the response that I got was, please send us the pictures when you find them, which did not help because we had very few. Roz gave me a few last night, and I can't tell you what happened to them. They're in cyberspace. I'm really sorry about that. Mike.
Yes, this is a menu from Tasties. I think it's around 1960 when the store was open. The restaurant was open to 1 o'clock in the morning. You can see.
Mike, what are the prices? Because I can't.
The price for a corned beef sandwich was 70 cents. You can get it with French fries, coleslaw for 89 cents. So things were really a lot cheaper then. And this menu has been hanging in Gold's Delicatessen in Westport. It's still there, the menu, and it's been there for over 30 years, since 1980, I guess. Carol, you can go to the next slide.
Okay.
This is a very small tie tack that my father had with the name of the store, and he would put you could put your own name on there. And what I'm going to say today, if anyone has one of these, I will make an appropriate donation to Rhoda Shullum if you have one of these. And if there's 10 of these out there and 10 people have them, I'll make 10 donations. So I want everybody to scramble and see if they can find one. I think that's it, Carol, for me.
Yes, okay. So I'm not sure that I can find the pictures that I seem to have lost, and I feel very badly about that. I may try. I'm going to ask Alan Alper to come on and share his story about Tasty.
Okay, am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Alan Alper. I grew up in Fairfield, lived there all of my life until we got married, and then we lived in Trumbull, and now we live in Wellington, Florida for the last 2 years. And when Michael called me about this, I just got verklempt thinking about all of the events that happened on Madison Avenue. I started my career getting a job at the Sunshine Market for 75 cents an hour. And I worked there 2 years, and then I was drafted by Tasty Delicatessen for 85 cents an hour. So that was a big move. After working in Tasty for a couple of weeks, I learned that they had an induction ceremony of new employees, which took place after the store closed. So it was 9 o'clock one night, and Irv said to me, we need to induct you into the Tasty family. I said, okay. And they had a big plastic funnel. They said, this is what we want to do. They took the funnel and they put it down the front of my pants. And they said, bend your head back, and they put a quarter on my forehead. And they said, I'll bet you can't take the quarter and dump it into the funnel. Well, I did, and I was pretty proud of that. They said, I'll bet you can't do it again. So I tipped my head back, and just as I was about to dump the second quarter into the funnel, they poured ice water down the funnel. So after that, I was inducted into the Tasty family. And I knew then that I had found my calling. You know, as a 16, 17-year-old kid, earning my first dollars on my own, I loved that job. I loved the customers. It was a terrific experience. how to deal with the public. And I'll never forget my relationship with everybody that I came in touch with at Tasty. I could tell you other funny stories, but I know we're limited to time. I do also want to say to Meredith Avenue, I don't know if Meredith, you remember this, I'm sure you do, that your parents bought my parents' home on Skytop Drive about 1.5 years after my father passed away.
I do remember that. I knew that as soon as I saw you. I said, yeah, that's definitely another memory.
I remember your mother and father coming to our house and going through the house, and my mother at that time sold the house to them. So we have fond memories of that. I'm just very happy to be part of this morning, and it does bring back fond memories of Zouderers and Tasty and Sunshine and Nidens. By the way, Meredith, I don't know how I remember this, but as a little kid, my parents took me to Nidens all the time, and there was one salesman there that took care of us all the time. His name was Val.
Oh, Val, sure, I remember him.
Remember Val?
Yep, yeah.
And I'm going back 60 years, 65 years ago, and I remember him as being a very good-looking man.
Very dapper.
Yes, very dapper, and he was the only one that took care of me. I guess my mother liked Val, and every time I needed something, Val took care of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, another thing about Nidens, not to interject, is that they treated all their customers like they were family. And as I meet people in Bridgeport who remember Nidens, one thing they always said was that if I needed a suit, you know, my Uncle Harry would say, take it home. You'll see if you want it. If you want it, come back and you'll pay us later. And they were very giving that way.
Yeah, I don't think stores do that today, but
No, I don't think so.
no, we had fond memories of Nidens, and the proof of the pudding is people would come back time and time again. So it's wonderful memories that we're sharing this morning, and I thank you for your time. I'm done.
So you're done. Okay, so
I don't want to take up any more time. I could tell more stories, but other people want to talk.
You know, Alan, there could be a part 2 of this. So one thing I'm going to say, I'm going to ask you if any of you do not want the pictures that you shared with me on our webpage, I would like to post them. Roz, that includes the ones that I seem to have lost that I had last night. I would like to do that. I'd like your permission to do that. That's one. Okay, great. That's one order of business. Second order of business, we've got something that goes right along with what we're talking about, memories. We've got a program called Every Plaque Has a Story, and many of you undoubtedly from Road of Sholem have plaques for your families. And we want to know about your families. We don't want their memories to go away. You're helping to keep them alive right here. We want them documented. We're putting together a book. We're making it digital. It's a very ambitious project. I tell everybody, I need you to do your homework. Any question about it, I sent a chat message so you know how to reach us. We value our alumni. There's a lot of programs going on. So anything you need to know about us, you can find on our website or on our Facebook page. With that said, I will open it to questions and comments, and we can stay as long as you want to stay. No food though. Mike isn't supplying corned beef. So
Carol, can you unmute me? Am I unmuted? Jill Lesser?
Do you know how to unmute, Jill?
She's unmuted.
I think I am. I think I am. I wanted to tell you a couple things relating to Roz Pomerantz's parents. I'm Jill Lesser. I'm the granddaughter of Clara and Abraham Aaron from Levine Coat Company on Harrison Street. My grandmother was Clara, passed away in '83. She was an avid customer at Benny Levine's. And when Mrs. Benny Levine, Sally, came to Levine Coat Company, she was treated like royalty, always given an extra piece of fur for the collar. And when Clara went to Benny Levine, she was treated equally in kind. Those type of relationships went on all up and down the street in Madison Avenue. That's what I wanted to relate, especially when Mrs. Harry Nelson came into Levine Coat Company. You would have thought that the Messiah's wife was now there. No offense, but she was also treated like that. So there were all of these very complicated relationships existing among the Jewish community merchants. That's it for me.
Okay.
Carol?
Anybody else? Because
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you.
This is, can you hear me, Carol?
Yes?
This is Stephen Hawkeiser. And I just want to thank you all for bringing us down this memory lane. I grew up on Bronx Avenue, and I'm really surprised to hear from people like Meredith who grew up a block or two from me, because I thought we were one of the only Jewish families in that neighborhood. I grew up sort of on the corner of Morningside Drive. And we had the Buffords across the street from us and the Rome sisters up the hill. A number of you know the Rome sisters because of Miss Rome being a teacher at Madison School. My parents had her, and I had her also. But I didn't think of it as a Jewish neighborhood at all, except for Madison Avenue. And when I'd go to shul, to Rosh Hashanah on Saturday mornings, every Saturday morning, my mother would go down to the Nidens building to get her hair done at Connie's Beauty Salon. She went there so long that not only did Connie retire, Connie's daughter Dolores took over the salon, and my mother went to her until she retired. So my mother's hair lasted a lot longer than the salon did, apparently. We went to Sunshine every week. My parents went out every Saturday night. To my mother, that was very important from her era, that they were out, they went on a date, they went to the movies, they always went out Saturday nights. So Saturday afternoon, or Friday afternoon, I guess, we went to Sunshine, got corned beef sandwiches, pickle, coleslaw, and then went to Zouderer's to get dessert. And growing up in Bridgeport, I thought that all bakeries had to start with a Z, because we had Zouderer's, we had Zwerdlings, and we had Zeisler's. And I moved out of Bridgeport in 1972 when I went away to college. I've never lived there since. But I was so surprised to go to another city and find there were Jewish bakeries that didn't start with Z. I thought it was some sort of rule. So I guess that's it. Just thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carol?
I'm going to, yeah, who's that? I can't
That's
see.
Debbie. It's Debbie Bear.
Yes, Debbie. Okay.
Okay. A few reminiscences. This is for Roz and anyone else who remembers Benny and Stash. Walking into your father's butcher shop one day, he always advertised that the veal was absolutely beautiful. And so I wanted some veal chops, which I knew were beautiful and taste wonderful. And he started to cut them, and I put my hand out. He said, Debish, move your hand away. I'll cut your hand off. I said, Benny, you're making them too thick. It's all right. You're going to love them. They're terrific veal. And of course, Stanley would shuffle away, get the veal. But then I don't know who remembers this. Betty decided to have a sideline besides meat. Harvey, your brother, Roz, decided to sell or be involved with socks. And so there was a huge table piled near Benny's door with all kinds of multicolored women's socks. And of course, in addition to getting your meat, you had the choice of many, many brands and kinds of socks. I don't know if anyone remembers this also. This is in the early 50s. There was a dancing school above the drugstore across the street on the corner. And we took dancing lessons on the second floor. No one remember that? I guess not. Okay. Fun, Carol. Thanks so much.
Okay. I just put somebody on the spot and I don't know if he's going to say anything. Jake Hogan, if you're still here, would you like to comment?
Sure, and I am still here. I left Bridgeport in '75. I went out to California to go to law school. But my memories of Bridgeport and especially Madison Avenue are extremely fond. Why? Because I grew up on Garfield near Madison, and we didn't have a car in the family. So the whole world of shopping had to be on Madison Avenue. There was nowhere else they could walk to, my mother and my grandmother who raised me, but to go to Madison Avenue. And Sundays, I have a memory of my uncle Henry Levine always going to Tasties and bringing over corned beef for his sister, my grandmother. And that was a treat. And bakery was always a treat. And one of my most fond memories was when I got out of the service in '71 and came back from Vietnam. My grandmother sent me over to Benny Levine's to pick something up. And I walked in and he said, "Oh, you're Bessie's grandson. All those times you came home on leave for the last 4 years, when your grandmother knew you were coming home, she'd run in and say, 'My JLa's coming home. My JLa's coming home. I need to get some veal chops.' That's his favorite thing." And she would make it for me. So all the memories I have of Madison Avenue are very warm and soft memories of a kid that of having treats, and all the treats came from Madison Avenue. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Renee Jacobs. Can you unmute? I know you want to speak. I have to find you. Renee? Okay, while we're waiting for Renee to unmute, because I'm struggling finding her, does anybody else want to make a comment?
Carol?
Yes. Hi, Edith.
Carol? Yes.
Yes.
Is Mike still on? Because I want him to hear this story. Mike,
Sure.
are you
Renee,
there?
can you hold until Edith is finished? Perfect. Okay, Edith, go for it.
My father had a house around the corner from the McKinley Avenue. After my mother died, he lived alone there, and he was trying to learn to cook for himself. And one day he decided to make eggs and onions for Shabbat, which we always had at noon. But he didn't have any chicken fat, but he did remember that there was something called naya fat that my mother used to buy. So he went into the deli and asked for 2 ounces of naya fat. And he was told that it comes in a pound, he has to buy a pound. He said, "But I only need 2 ounces. And there was a lot of back and forth and back and forth. And finally, must have been Mike's father, because it sounds like somebody who made an executive decision, decided to open a jar and sell him 2 ounces of naya fat. So when my father told me this story, I said, that was a very nice thing for them to do. And he must have lost the sale of that jar of naya fat. He said, no, he didn't, because after that, he kept a jar of naya fat in the refrigerator for me. And every time I needed naya fat, they sold me 2 ounces from that jar. So I just wanted to tell you that story, because I think what happened was that whoever he was dealing with at the store recognized that this was a man who never shopped for groceries. This was a man who didn't have a wife. He came from Europe. He knew very little, and it was the way he dealt in Europe. So somebody recognized who he was dealing with, and they were kind enough to accommodate him. So since my father told me that story, I remember very fondly about the family and the sword. So Mike, I wanted you to hear that story.
Thank you very much, Edith.
Thank you, Edith. Renee. No, you're muted.
I can't hear you. No.
Okay. No. How are we unmuting her? No.
No, she's not muted, but there's an issue with the microphone. go to the left side of the screen where you have the microphone picture, go into audio setting, pick up audio setting.
Me or her?
Of course, her.
Oh, okay. We can't.
Maybe you can call in on the telephone and we can go to someone else, Carol, and she can maybe call in.
Can you do that? Can you call us?
Yeah, I'll send her the phone number and I'll give her some suggestions.
Nima's going to send you the phone number. We can't hear you at all, but we've got an option. Anybody else while we're trying to troubleshoot for Renee? Okay, then in my normal way of putting people on the spot, Rabbi Nelson, we couldn't have a program without a word or two from you. Are you still here? Yes.
Well, I am just enthralled by the program, and I have not heard a better description, or it's very unique that Roz said, wow, that my father was a spiritual beacon. I have not heard a better phrase, and I am beyond touched by that. And Neiden was a great store. I remember being treated very nicely in the men's department, suits, and all the stories were fabulous. Fabulous. I've been out. I left, I graduated Bassick in 1957 and Brandeis in 61. I really wasn't back for most of the 60s then, but it was great to hear these stories. Oh my goodness. There's more than I can, I am just, thank you for this program. And I want the recipe for that challah if it's available. I think you should post that too.
Well, you've just given me an idea, so.
Okay, thank you for calling on me. I wasn't going to say anything, but Roz Pomerantz, thank you very much for that reminiscence and that description. I'm going to share it with my whole family.
It was truly heartfelt.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak? Okay, so I'm going to.
Carol, Rita Finzi, it looks like, wants to speak. She's raising her hand. If she can unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, Renee, who's trying to do it, is my niece, but I don't know who could say that Benny Levine was at their wedding. He was at my wedding, and then when I moved to New York after getting married, I had to bring all my neighbors. We used to go shopping there. And Neiden's, I got my first store credit card there, and I learned how to charge very well. To this day, I still do it. And I just want to know, am I the only person that went to Bassick High School? And does anyone remember roller skating at the mosque?
Well, Rabbi Nelson went to Bassick.
I went to
so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass.
Get off. Don't get off. I don't care. I couldn't really care less whether I'm
I
out.
do.
Okay, that's it for me.
Okay.
Okay, Jordan, say.
Barbara, did you want to speak?
I know I'm here, and someone else is on it.
Roller skating as
You
well.
were unmuted again.
Oh, okay.
There.
Okay.
Okay, you're on. Here, okay. Now speak up.
I can't hear.
Can't hear you, Barbara.
You can hear me now.
Yes.
I was just responding to roller skating at the mosque. I don't know how many people remember that. And, you know, was remembering that actually my brother had recently found and sent me a list of all the things that we bought at Sunshine Market. And unfortunately, this list came to me about a week ago, and it's in some pile of paper, and I couldn't quickly find it to show you. But what I realized is that so much is inherited. I mean, when I buy cream cheese, it has to be the certain kind of cream cheese that we got at Sunshine Market or a Tasty Deli. I still have Campbell's mushroom soup and pea soup in my pantry. So I don't know how much of the purchases that you buy are really
Oh, the
reminiscent
rug, what happened?
of what you
Something
grew up
happened
with.
to the rug?
Pardon? Someone.
All right, hit the thing now. Hit your face.
Um,
Hit your face so she'll know you want to talk.
But
I'll call on you next, Ronnie.
Get away from me.
Yeah, I wanted to, I'm
I
sorry.
can find that list to share with you at some point.
So that's a great, Jordan, hold on one sec.
Yeah,
Ronnie,
no problem.
That's a great idea that between you and Rabbi Nelson, without even realizing it, I'm going to ask you all, before many more people leave us, that if you have reminiscences that you'd like to share that didn't make it here, send them to info@roadofshalom.com. And just put Carol on it, and I will get them, and I'll make sure that they all get on. We'll have a log. It's just another way of sharing with people and sharing who we are and maintaining our history. So I'm going to, this is my plan. I think Ronnie Lustig and then Ernie Tischler, and I'm going to call on Debbie Bowles, our president, to end this with Mike. So if anybody else has any comments, send it to me in the chat and I'll make sure that I call on you.
Can you hear me now?
Down on the bottom.
Renee?
Renee, yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. I just really needed to say this.
He knows I'm getting
Brings
on, and
back
I hit
great
this, it
memories.
was green, and it went off. This.
Okay, Renee.
One has to do with Nidens. When I was a kid, I had flat feet, I guess, and I had to wear Oxfords. And the first time that I was actually allowed to get flats, my mother sent me to Nidens by myself, and Harvey measured my foot, and I wanted to get a pair of black.
Your name is in the square.
I wanted to get a pair of black flats. Well, he wouldn't let me get them until he called my mother to make sure that she gave me permission to buy these black flats. That's the first thing with Niden. Second thing, I grew up in Fairfield, but my grandparents lived in Bridgeport, so we were there all the time. And our house burnt down in Fairfield.
I don't put my feet out there.
And when we went to Niden's, because after the fire we had no clothes, the salespeople just took us around all over, had us pick out whatever we wanted and said, just take it. Just take it. This is what you need. I was in college. I was student teaching. My sisters were in high school, and Niden's just gave us all the clothes that we needed during that time. Now, my other memory was Benny the Butcher. When my mother would send me down to buy meat from there, and I'd go in, I had no idea what kind of meat I was getting. He didn't even tell me. And I would just go in and say, my mother wants barbecue meat. Okay. And he'd get the barbecue meat, whatever it was. I don't know what it was. And he would write it on his waxed butcher paper, the amount. I never paid anything.
Bye.
Bye. You're on. I never paid anything, but he wrote it on. And next time my mother went in, he paid. And it's almost like we didn't have any cash ever. Everybody just wrote everything down, and then somehow they got paid. Kaufman's was like that. Sunshine's was like that. Not tasty. And that's it. That's what I really wanted to say.
Thank you. Okay, Ronnie and Jordan, you're back on. Ronnie and Jordan, I know you wanted to speak again.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. No, there were a few places mentioned with no names, and I just wanted to clarify it. And one was mention of the pharmacy across from Benny Levine's, which was Kangerser. They had the pharmacy there on Madison Avenue, a Bridgeport family. Kangerser, Kangiser. And the other thing, they were talking about the veal at Benny Levine's. I think, Carol, you should tell them where that veal came from, because your grandfather, I guess it would be, who was in that business for many, many years before Dad went in and took it over. So those are my memories, of those two little events that were mentioned just now. And by the way, some other person mentioned about Jewish people in the North End. I lived on Wayne Street between Savoy and Westfield Avenue. And my friends were on Amsterdam Avenue, on Westfield Avenue, on Savoy Street. And there were a host of Jewish families in that neighborhood at that time. So, and I'm going into the late 30s and 40s. So anyway, it was fun. And I thank you very much in allowing me to participate in my old age. And I did enjoy hearing everybody. And I'm a Beth Eller, by the way, 50 years there. So my Rhoda Shalom ties, and you speak so much of Rhoda Shalom, were I had 3 older sisters who's all were married at Rhoda Shalom, and whose children were bat mitzvah and bar mitzvah there. And so there's a lot of attachment to Rhody. And as also with my brother-in-law Lawrence, who's remained down there for many years and ascended the million, Larry Ostrovsky. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to be going about my business today, and I appreciate it and enjoyed it very much. And God willing, look forward to the very next event that you call together, Carol. Thank you for your efforts, but don't forget who the veal guy was who brought it to Benny Levine to be able to sell. Okay.
Thank you for the plug for my dad. I want to thank everybody, our speakers. You are all fabulous. I mean, really fabulous. You came out from all over the country, and I really appreciate, because this was just an unbelievable program. I want your stories. I want your every plaque has a story. I'm going to let Mike and then Debbie wrap this up. And we do virtual coffees twice a month. You never know what we're going to be doing next. Feel free to join. If you want to be on the mailing list, again, info@rhodashalom.com. Put Carol on it. I'll get it. And we'd love to see you and reconnect. So Mike, where are you?
Thank you. I'm right here. Thank you, Carol. And thank you to everybody that participated, especially the speakers. And as you can tell, we didn't rehearse anything. We weren't, it's not like we had a dress rehearsal.
They're going to know you're leaving.
I do want to tell you one interesting story. When I called Ronnie Farrell, we've been at Rhoda Shalom, been getting oil from Kaufman's. Today, we're still getting it. And Ronnie is still very helpful. Anytime we have a problem with the furnace or anything, he's always got somebody there to fix it or whatever. So when I called him about this event, and I said, Ronnie, Mike Fleischer, I heard a little hesitation. And then I said, no, Ronnie, this isn't about the furnace or boiler. And I heard a sigh of relief by Ronnie that we weren't calling about a problem. And I also, when I did speak to Alan Alpert, I thought I told him to make sure he told an appropriate story, but I guess he chose to tell that story. And a couple of years ago, I was in Gold's with my dad, and it was around the time of the Harvey Weinstein scandal and everything. And he was a customer of Gold's, and they were talking about it. And my father said, I wonder if anybody from when he had the store, like Alan Alpert, will complain about the funnel trick. So I called Alan, and he said he was going to file a lawsuit, but instead, if we took him for a corned beef sandwich, that would be fine. But anyways, thank you very, very much. And I really appreciated the good words and hearing all the stories. And thank you again. And now I'll turn it over to Debbie.
No, wait, I forgot that I promised Ernie Tischler he could say something, and I could never do that. So Ernie, where are you? Ernie?
While Ernie is unmuting, I just want to thank I want to thank everybody. I want to especially thank Carol and Mike for coordinating this, and our current cantor Hirsch, for videotaping it. I also wanted to tell anybody who's a Road of Shalom alumni that our current rabbi is Rabbi Richard Eisenberg, who couldn't be here today, and he's an alum, and he grew up in Bridgeport around the corner from Road of Shalom. Also, Carol is always looking for ideas. So if you are from the Bridgeport area and you want and you'd like to share on one of our coffee and conversations, please contact Carol at info@roadofshalom.com. And we especially want to thank our adopted rabbi Rabbi David Nelson, who it's just been a joy to have him participate in many of the things, including our weekly Zoom services a lot of times. And he will be delivering the sermon on December 26th via Zoom. Rabbi Eisenberg informed me this morning. So every once in a while, we're lucky enough to have, besides Rabbi Eisenberg, who's wonderful, but Rabbi Nelson deliver the sermon. So he will be delivering the sermon December 26th. Thanks again to Carol and to Mike Fleischer and to everybody on here who supports the Road of Shalom. And we do have some Talmud Torah scholarships available as well for alumni's children. And that's all I have to say. Thank you all. Ernie, are you there?
Ernie, where are you?
I'm here. Can you
Oh,
hear me?
good. Oh, we can hear you. Can we see you? There
All
you
right.
are.
First of all, I was in awe of the entire event. I grew up very quickly on the other side. You were considered the North End. I grew up in the West End with the Hungarians, but we always traveled to Madison Avenue. I'm probably one of the oldest people on here today, and to me, these are great memories that I will cherish forever. Thanks again for putting on this great event. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Ernie. Okay, I thank you all for coming. I will look forward to your comments. I'll look for you on our website. There you are. And stay safe, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Awesome, Carol. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. It was wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you.
Yes,
It was great.
People are the best resources you'll ever find.
Thanks, Carol. It was great.
Thanks, Carol.
Carol, can you put up the YouTube information?
I will. What did Nima say? I will get it to you. It's
We'll
not
also-
ready yet.
We'll also put it on the website, and we'll
Yes.
also, if you're on our email list, we will send the link out through our email when it is ready. And if you'd like to be on the email list, as Carol said, just email info@roadofshalom.com and we'll stick you on the email list, and you'll get it. So
Yeah, it takes a little while, but you'll have it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, hello, Charlie. Goodbye, Charlie.
So long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Jackie.